This is the Soul-Filled Sisterhood podcast, and I'm your host, Nicole Burgess, licensed marriage and family therapist and an empowerment coach for women. The information shared in this podcast is not a substitute for seeking help from a licensed mental health professional. Now here is today's episode. Episode 8. Well, if you've ever wondered about shadow work, changing the vibration level of the planet, going more in depth with some energy work, then today's episode is for you. I love this conversation that I had with Keri Nola and all that she has shared regarding her current work and her path that has gotten her to where she is today. So without further ado, here is the episode. Well, welcome, sisters. I am so excited to be having this conversation with my next guest. Keri has been such an inspiration to me, and I am honored to be having this conversation with her today. Keri Nola is a serial soulful entrepreneur, expressing her work as a best-selling author, retired psychotherapist, an energetic visionary, a podcaster, oracle card creator, and the founder of the Sacred Soul Circle for healing entrepreneurs. While building and maintaining an abundant clinical practice for over a decade, Keri's work has since evolved to support light workers in awakening their gifts through mentorship, products, programs, and retreats. She is on a mission to ignite a global heart-centered conversation that allows healers to activate their healer archetype and bring their precious light to the planet at this special time of humanity's evolution. Keri, I am so excited to have you on today and share some of the actual shadow work that you do. So thank you so much for being on.
Oh, thanks for having me, Nicole. I'm so excited to be here and to play in this conversation. I'm so curious to hear what wants to be shared with all the sisters listening.
Awesome. Well, I even just love how you even phrase that. The conversations and the various work that I have done with you and watched you do. I love that you just even talk about it as play, because that is such that connection that we can go back and forth and let it be whatever it is that it comes up and evolves.
Yes, I think one of the shadows that we've been playing with is the shadow of seriousness, the shadow of doing. And I feel like we're really illuminating the light of being and our opportunity to be more playful, be more at ease. And that doesn't mean that we can't have meaningful and deep conversations. And I think we can bring other aspects of ourselves online to allow those to happen in a way that is softer and gentler as well.
Oh, I love that. And it's so true. Would you mind sharing just a little bit more about, I know what you mean by shadow work, but would you mind sharing with our listeners what you mean by that or what that really is for what you do?
Sure. So shadow work means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. There's so many different facets of it. For me, at the base level, it's really just about shining a light on the aspects of ourselves, our qualities, our behaviors, our patterns and themes that are showing up that have been hidden. Maybe there are aspects of ourselves that we feel ashamed of or embarrassed about, or that may make us less likely to be liked or accepted or belong in our family or in society or different communities or groups. And so we just kind of tuck them away, deciding that like these are unlovable aspects of ourselves. And then we end up operating in the world in a way that is only half of ourselves or some portion of ourselves that isn't really wholehearted. And what I'm aware of is that all parts of us have gifts. And when those gifts aren't accessible because we've shunned these aspects of ourselves into the darkness or the shadows, then we're missing out on inviting these gifts forward and bringing them forth into the world. And if we just look at the state of affairs on our planet right now and how humanity is really trying to remember who we are and why we're here and how we can tune back into a frequency of love and connection, we really need all hands on deck and all parts of ourselves on deck to allow that to happen as quickly and swiftly and easily as possible.
Well, and I love that it's owning all parts of ourselves versus I think really for women, I think we get so many mixed messages, right? that it's like, no, you have to be strong, but no, you can't. You have to look this way. If you're tearful, then you're weak. But if you're angry, then you're something else. And it's being able to say all those parts of ourselves that come forth are okay, and to be accepting of that. And that when we accept all those parts, we are, like you're saying, is we fully show up in every aspect of our life, not just personal, but also professional, and everything that we do. And when we honor that, we also help kind of, as you and I have talked about before, and what you really talk about as well, is really change the frequency, right, out in our planet, because we're living a more conscious life, and being able to do that at such a higher vibrational level, a higher level, when we show up that way.
Absolutely. And if we believe that we are all connected, then that would make sense, right? That who we are and how we're showing up is rippling out and impacting other souls on the planet. So I think, like, when I shine a light on one of my shadows, I'll take, for example, the fear of being looked at as a bitch. So that might lead me to play it really safe in relationships and to not speak my full truth, but maybe to sugarcoat it. And I think there's a sweet balance where we can speak truths from our heart, in a way that allows us to be fully congruent with who we are and how we're expressing ourselves. So as I give myself permission to do that and be honest about my thoughts and my feelings and let that show up in my life and in my relationships, that's holding up a mirror energetically to other brothers and sisters on the planet who may be struggling with that same shadow, saying like, wow, maybe I can give myself permission to do this as well. So I love the magic of interconnectedness, and really thinking about this in terms of when we give ourselves permission, it invites others to that permission, and that the reason we're giving ourselves permission is often likely because somebody went before us and had the courage to give themselves that permission. So we can feel the gratitude and the knowing and kind of the full circleness of our connections with one another.
Yes, I love that. I just had this beautiful image just coming through. It's like what you're saying is like someone who's walked before us. And when they changed their inner knowing and they showed up fully, that it ripples out, as you said, to us, and then to the other person that we're, in connection with. And it really does begin to shift, not just in your own, it's your own life, your own social connections, your community, your state, your country, and it just keeps rippling out as we continue to fully show up. I love that.
Yeah. And I feel like in order to really give ourselves permission to lean into that and to feel the fullness of that, we really have to be aware of our power, our impact, and just how meaningful our presence on the planet really is. Because if we're minimizing who we are and it's like, oh, I'm just one person, then we don't really give ourselves permission maybe to dig quite as deep and to go to the basement level of our consciousness and go, hey, what did I stuff down here that could really have a gift for me and for the planet that can come forth right now.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Well, and with just what you were saying too, right? When we have that I've almost called I don't know if it's necessarily the scarcity mindset, but just the mindset of, oh, I'm only one person. But it really is all of our thoughts, all of our actions and our behaviors, they do have consequences. So whether we're stepping into that place where it's like, it's okay if I mess up, I'm coming from this place and I'm learning and I'm growing, that self-acceptance, you are again showing and role modeling to others it's okay to be where you are, that it's the perfect moment for where you are, and stepping into that versus that kind of you're shrinking and you're coming from such a place of, oh, I can't go there, or maybe it's a good girl kind of mindset if I don't want to bend the rules because something may or may not happen to me. That then we start to do the mask and the overwhelm comes on, the stuckness is there, and you stay small.
Yeah, and that's a huge shadow, I think, that many of us women are playing with, and men as well. I don't like to pick and choose. We all have the masculine and feminine and all of these pieces, right?
Yes.
But scarcity, the shadow of scarcity, where we're keeping ourselves small, where we're not believing in the infiniteness of our potential and of the the possibilities. I feel like we've put ourselves and each other in these boxes, and I think there's a real call for expansion into the infiniteness of our light and our beingness. And it's hard for, I think, our human selves to wrap around the vastness that all of that is. And I don't certainly pretend to fully comprehend it myself. And I do feel a call to just invite the curiosity into the conversation of how much more abundance can we allow, and why are we keeping ourselves from more joy, more pleasure, more money, more love, more peace? And oftentimes we find those answers in the shadows, in the aspects of ourselves that we've tucked away for fear of being rejected in some way.
And I think what you're, that you're hitting on, when we tuck those parts away, those shadow parts away, it's almost as if, well, if I bring that to the light, if I bring that to the surface, maybe I'm not going to like what I see or that comes forth. And again, what you're saying is stay in that place of curiosity, where you give yourself grace, you give yourself that compassion. It's whatever it is okay. And we don't have to, I also come from this place where I think what conjures up in my mind is when we're talking about that abundance and really stepping into this place of bringing more joy and love into our lives, there can be such a fear of whether it's the ego gets involved or the message of like, well, you have to be a certain way in order to have those things in life, where it's like trying to role model somebody else that you're like, but I'm not in congruence with that. It's staying in your own lane, your own congruence of that's going to look different for every person on this planet.
Yes.
And it's all okay. But truly, showing up for yourself and saying, I'm enough.
Yes. And when we forget our enoughness and our worthiness, we're easily seduced by external factors, right?
Yes.
So we end up being, pulled in different directions and allowing ourselves to follow rather than find out what our true home base is within ourselves, and then make decisions and feel into where we're naturally being called and led, and what's in resonance, what's in alignment with who we actually are versus who we believe we're supposed to be in order to be acceptable and approved of. And this is such a dance, right? Because this world is about belonging and belonging to ourselves and to one another and to the planet and being connected. And I feel like the only way we can do that well and where it feels just yummy and exciting is to be present with ourselves deeply and completely.
Yes. And I'm so nodding my head vastly up and down going, oh my gosh, you've hit it. And I think so much of these conversations that I'm having with other women, it is saying that it's like, it's okay to give ourselves permission to pause, to reflect, to do that inner, I guess, exploration, right?
Yeah.
Because when you know yourself, then that's the gift that you're sharing out with the world. And I love the work that you're doing with the shadow of, again, bringing that forth in a kind and loving way versus kind of like forcing it or putting a negative spin on it. Yes. I know sometimes when people talk about shadow, it's almost as if it's a negative. And it's like, well, no, it's just a part that we've hidden away, or a part that maybe we, as you were saying, maybe it's the fear of something, or whether I'm going to be humiliated, or I felt embarrassed about, or there's shame that has come up and I want to bury that away.
Yes. And in our collective consciousness, I think there's been this judgment that's trying to be healed around the dark being bad and the light being good. And I think our conversation today is saying, well, what if that's not the case at all? What if they're both just opposite sides or different sides of a polarity, and there's gifts in both? And this is where I think love with a capital L comes into play. It's how we really love one another. I don't need you to be any way other than how you actually are, and I can still love you. That doesn't mean that we don't set boundaries or we don't create distance at times if we're not feeling resonance with how we're going to interact with that light or dark aspect of someone. And that's, I think, what love is, the unconditional love. I love you, period, not I love you when you act a certain way. And I think that work starts, easier said than done, right?
Right. I was giggling because I'm like, you just said that so beautifully. And it is also sometimes challenging.
Of course. And I think that's where it starts inside. So how do we know if a shadow's been activated? I think the easiest way is to notice our levels of agitation. So I had a friend once say to me, anytime we're over a 5 on a scale of 0 to 10, with 0 being like no reaction and 10 being like flying off the handle, like anytime we're over 5, there might be something there to look at, just something that's a trigger that's being activated. So usually there's certain themes or patterns, like every time, someone gives themselves permission to make a lot of money, for example, we might have a judgment come up and be like, God, they're so greedy. Or, I mean, don't they leave anything for anybody else? Or what's wrong with them? Look at them shining and just doing their thing. And we can get bothered by that. And so in my shadow healing system, that would be considered the shadow of jealousy, which gift it has for us is to help us look at the places where we're not giving ourselves permission to accept or allow that level of abundance or that level of visibility. And if we're willing to turn every trigger into a curiosity about, okay, what is that person giving themselves permission for? Or how is that person showing up that in a way that I haven't maybe resolved within myself? Maybe there's an opportunity to set a boundary that I haven't set yet. Maybe there's a part of myself that I haven't accepted. And so I don't like seeing it in that person. Maybe they're giving themselves permission for something that I've been withholding from myself, and it's really pissing me off to see it. I think any of those things are clues that invite us inward. And shadow work doesn't happen outside of ourselves. We all have to be responsible for shining a light on our own unhealed wounds. And in doing that, that's how I believe the planet is healing. There's a lot of finger pointing right now. A lot of who's doing what right and wrong. And we think that by telling other people what to do or not to do, that healing is happening there. And yet that's the frequency that created this current collective consciousness of fear anyway. So I think we're introducing a new frequency where the healing will actually happen. And I think that's by taking full responsibility for our own part in the process.
And I love that, Keri, that reminder of taking full responsibility for our own process, our own stuff. And when we're in, like, as you said, kind of like when you have that scale going and you're like, oh, this is a trigger, and then you figure out, okay, this is what's going on for me, you can articulate that better to the person that you're in relationship with, again, whether it's personal, professional, whatever, if needed. And it begins to close the gap of that trying to us versus them mentality, the blaming game that goes on. And it comes much more to the inclusion, how we all are human beings. And when we get to know one another, like truly know one another, we still may not necessarily agree on every mindset or way of being, but it takes it, I'll take the word but out, and it takes away that exclusion piece and brings us all so much closer together, where we do come from a place of acceptance, and you're on your path, I'm on my path, and we're really here all to work together on this planet versus, such a blaming and a fear mindset, I guess, against one another.
Yes. And I'm thinking of like how this helps us to deprogram a lot of our identity that's false. And this is what's so scary, I think, about shadow work. And it has been for me, because who I thought I was, these costumes and masks that I built my whole self around, once I started looking at myself and these parts of me, all of that started collapsing and shattering, even so much so that I retired from my work as a psychotherapist, the work that I thought I would be doing in that expression, until I was old and gray. Mm-hmm. It just shocked me, because the way that I was being asked to show up in the world when I got in touch with my soul and my deep truth was just different than the path I had been on. And I'm very grateful for that path. And it was absolutely how I was meant to be showing up until that point. But then once all those identities started loosening and unwinding, it was like I got to see a different version of myself that was actually being born. And as you're listening to this, I just want to honor and acknowledge, like, if you're scared to meet these parts of you, it's okay. It's normal. And to just say, I'm scared. Like, some days I don't want to do this work. Some days I don't want to look at my shadows. Some days I just want to pretend like, I'm confused and I don't, I don't know why these things are happening. I don't want to look at my triggers. And I think that's part of our humanness, is just forgiving ourselves for days when we don't want to do the work, and then waking up and choosing to do the work on the days when we're up for it. And that forgiveness piece, I think, is a really particularly challenging part of shadow work, because the more that we forgive and love ourselves for the things that we think we did or didn't do that make us bad or good humans, it means that we can't help but start to forgive and love others. And this can really be an identity crusher, because we have a story that people who do certain things, quote unquote, maybe don't deserve forgiveness, or maybe we don't want to forgive the people in our lives who have done things that have generated great pain and hurt for us. And I tell you what, when you start forgiving yourself, that judgment toward others starts to fall away, and it can be earth shattering, because no, but wait, I didn't want to forgive you. Like, wait, no, I want to be angry still. I want to, and I know that might not make sense in our conscious mind, but like to our biological human system, it doesn't feel safe always to let go of those pieces of our identity and our belief system.
Well, and I loved how you phrased it too. It's like this identity crusher. And that's so true. Because oftentimes, right, when there has been a transaction between two people and the other person has intentionally caused harm, it is like this counterintuitive thing that you're holding on to. It's like you're not forgiving yourself in the sense like I've harmed them, but it's more of I'm forgiving myself for holding on to that energy, that I can go ahead and I can forgive them as well. Not necessarily forget the act or the behavior, but as I release that, then I open up more of the flow within myself versus staying stuck in that.
Yes. Yeah, forgiveness being for us, and it also just clears that cord of energy between us and the other person, and it frees up for a whole new reality to reveal itself to us. I think one of my favorite definitions of forgiveness, which here a little trigger warning, because I know that this was hard for me to hear at first, but I feel like I heard it from Byron Katie, although I don't know that it originated from her, but it's like the realization that what I thought happened didn't actually happen. So it's like, not that if we take abuse, for example, not that the abuse didn't happen, but the story about the abuse wasn't what I thought it was, that it makes me a bad person, or that I caused it, or that person meant to harm me in that way. Like whatever stories we have that created the deep like pain and struggle for ourselves as a result of that happening to us, it's there's a freedom that comes with being curious about, is there another reality that could show itself to me that would be more loving to myself and to what occurred, that could free and liberate this stuck energy so that I can live full out again, and I can just be all of me again, whatever that might look like.
Yes. And again, I love this conversation because it's so much about stripping away the illusions, those identifiers, those masks that we can sometimes truly live under for a long, long time. And in my life right now where I'm at, I call it like working with women in midlife, because it's like, okay, it is okay to really, really step back into your core truth, your inner wisdom, and begin to truly shed those things that no longer serve you, that it's okay to fully step into your power and really let that light shine. So I love this conversation about the shadow work and being able to stay curious and go deeper with that and shine the light on that as you feel called and as you feel ready to do that. And that just begins to really shift and shake up your own world. I just love that.
Yeah, it's a game changer for sure. Requires or invites a lot of patience and compassion for ourselves and for each other. It's like we're all just fumbling around. It's messy. It's, it's uncomfortable. It's awkward. And I think the more grace I have for myself in that process, the more grace I can have for everyone else.
Absolutely. And I would, if you would be open to it, Keri, maybe pull a card for the collective. But before you do that, I would love if you would share, what are some of those practices you've done through the years that have helped you continue to dive deeper into those shadows and bring those forward so that you could really, again, kind of do this soul work that you're doing currently in your work and in your life to stay very centered into who you are and let that inner gift really come forth. What has helped you over the years?
I love that question. There's been a lot of different seasons, and there's some definite themes or threads that run consistent with all of them. I mean, sometimes it's been like being in therapy, body work, acupuncture, energy work, intuitives. There's been so many, I think mentorship is a big piece of this, right? Like seeing ourselves through the mirror of somebody else who's also waking up and on a path of truth seeking and integrity and deep self-connection and compassion. Because sometimes it's hard to see ourselves by ourselves. And yes, we can do it. And it's necessary, I think, to cultivate that relationship within ourselves. But before I had any idea how to see myself, it was like I needed a mirror. Like, I don't know if I've got spinach in my teeth unless I'm like looking in the mirror or somebody tells me. Like, I don't always feel that. It's like a microscopic situation going on there. So oftentimes there's aspects of ourselves that are kind of leaking out that we don't really see without some kind of support. So I would say mentorship, allowing others to invite us back to ourselves is a piece of it, and really trusting your gut about who those people are, what those resources are at any given time, and acknowledging when the season with that mentorship level has ended, and allow yourself to transition to something new. Because I think there's some mentors that we travel with for a long time, and there's some that are just there for a moment. And sometimes it's our partner, sometimes it's our child, sometimes it's our boss or a friend, or sometimes it's somebody that we hire. I mean, there's a lot of different expressions of this. And my body, and staying present with my body is now one of my greatest teachers. It's my body never lies. And I would invite you to notice if your body ever lies as well. Like the body is holding all of the cellular memory and experiences. And so when something is off, or there's an invitation to look at something or to see something in a new way, we'll typically have a symptom that reflects that. And so I know that there's certain things that I feel in my chest around my heart chakra. It's like when there's something around loving or being loved, or something that needs to be let go of, and I'm holding on to some grieving, that usually shows up in my chest. And so it'll be a tightness, it'll be, a cramp, it'll be some type of heaviness that will let me know. And so I just breathe into that space and ask, what do you want me to know? And at first, when you start doing this, you might not hear anything, because it's like, why should I tell you? Where the hell have you been? It's like, you don't reveal your deep, dark secrets on the first date. You got to ease into that, right? So I just invite you to stay with it, to place your hands on the part of your body that might be tense or tight. In our culture, we're very quick to get rid of the symptom before we actually discover or even look for or consider that the symptom has something that it wants us to know. It's like if the fire alarm's going off in our house, we know there could be smoke around. It could be a false alarm, but we're going to look around and check. So for me, my body is a smoke alarm. It's like, okay, cool. Where is the smoke? Let me look. Is it this relationship? Is it this pattern? Is it, what am I supposed to be seeing? What is this calling my attention to? And that's been huge. And I noticed that the deeper my connection is with myself and my body, the more quickly I hear the responses and the answers. And now the symptoms can move a lot more quickly. not always.
Mm-hmm.
And, I can spot the pattern and go, oh yeah, that's that thing that I do when I'm scared. And okay, cool. Like, thanks for showing me I'm doing that here. And let me breathe, take ownership for that, and see if I can feel my way through the feelings and let them pass. I know that's a mouthful. Does that feel, Nicole, like it
Oh,
paints a picture
it was
of some options?
perfect.
Okay.
Yes, it was perfect because I love how it may not be just one type of work for women to kind of tap back into themselves. It may be all those different healing ways that are out there and the mentoring that is out there. But I think that core of it, like what you talk about, what I talk about with my own clients, of just knowing your own body, right? It's the mind body connection. And when we're tapped into that, it is such a great resource of information, and that we can move forward sometimes quicker because we get it's like, oh yeah, there it is again. Okay, thank you for that. Let me move forward. All right, got it. And go
Yep.
on. Yes.
Yes.
Beautiful.
Beautiful. So I know you asked me if we could pull a card. Yeah, should we introduce the listeners to the messages from Shadow Deck and see what wants to come through?
Yes, please. That would be great.
Beautiful. So about 2 or 3 years ago now, I was having a lot of painful symptoms. Was feeling just tense and tight, not only physically, but like emotionally. I felt like there was something that wanted to show itself to me, but I couldn't see it yet. So one of the resources that I didn't mention yet that has been helpful for me is using intuitive resources like oracle cards, angel cards. Tarot hasn't been a particular guide for me, but those types of resources. And so I was looking at some of those decks that I had, looking for the wisdom, asking the question, like, what do I need to see? And so many of the readings were like, you're right on track and everything's going great. And I was like, well, thank you for that. Like, I know that at the spiritual level that feels true. And at the human level, I'm just feeling stuck and I want more. I want to see the parts of me I can't see. And they weren't coming through these resources. So when I sat in meditation and really asked, like, what is next? What will reveal these things to me? I began to download intuitively a set of 34 energies that were shadow energies for the most part. There's a few light energies in the deck, and a couple of neutral cards to help us take the healing experience deeper. And the guidance I received was, you can't find that in other resources because you're actually the one that's meant to bring it through. So talk about that identity upgrade. When I was like, wait, who, me? You what? For who? I don't know if I can believe this. This sounds a little much. So once I got over myself in that regard, which did take a while, it took 9 months to actually give myself full permission to birth this into reality. The Messages from Shadow Oracle Deck and Healing System was born. And it's basically just a resource to point us back to the parts of ourselves that we're not necessarily seeing. And the deck is energetically attuned to heal at the cellular level of our experience. And just by looking at the images with your permission, they can invite the unlocking of patterns within us that have been really resistant to healing at the conscious level. Our ego self wants things to stay the same. It's avoiding death at all costs. And it might not be a physical death, but identity upgrades, stepping into new versions of ourselves, are mini deaths, and they are endings. And so it's always a very interesting and often messy process to let our ego go through those deaths. Right? You had a few of those in your time, Nicole?
Just a few.
Yeah, me too. So, yeah, I would love to pull a card. If you hear any background noise, I'm just shuffling the deck right now. And I'm going to pull a card and just see what is present in our collective energy. Interesting. The card that comes through for our listeners here today, Nicole, is the Shadow of Abandonment.
Ooh.
Wow. Yeah. So this also correlates with all of the cards correlate with one of the major energy centers that we might know as chakras. And this correlates with healing in the throat chakra. So it's like telling ourselves, the whole truth about where we may be abandoning ourselves. So it's interesting because that's been so much of our conversation today. It's
Yes.
easy to feel abandoned or let down or done wrong by somebody else. And we are responsible for noticing where we're abandoning ourselves. Like if we were left by somebody else, leaving ourselves on top of that makes it that much more painful. It's like when we feel rejected or traumatized or hurt as a result of something someone has done in relationship with us, what we really and truly need is someone to be there showing up with and for us. And it's great when other human beings can do that, and oftentimes they will and they do. And when we're there creating our own soft place to fall, there's really deep healing that happens there. And I don't know if this is some wild cosmic joke or what, but what I've noticed is once we start being present and connected to ourselves and being our own soft place to fall, I just love that reference. Just imagining being our own like cushy pillow that we can just kind of fall into and not have that hard, intense crash. Life becomes so much more just gentle. And that's when other people start showing up and meeting us in that same way. It's almost like we send out a signal to the universe, like, please abandon me, please abandon me, please treat me wrongly, because that's how we're accustomed to being present with ourselves. But once we are like, no, I'm worthy of being shown up for with softness and presence and love and compassion, then we send out that signal like, hey, this is what I'm available for. And other people start meeting us there. So the cosmic joke to me is like, well, damn, now I don't need you to, because I know how to do it. But okay, cool. Like the more the merrier, like come on in and I'll receive your support and your witnessing as I hold myself.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's our next level of really humanity's awakening, is that it's not either or. It's not you take care of me or I have to take care of myself. It's like, I'm going to take care of me. And I'd really love if you would hold and witness me while I'm doing that, because we're not here to do this by ourselves. And I think we've gotten confused about what not doing it by ourselves means. I think we've abandoned ourselves in that process, thinking it's other people's job to take care of us, when really it's our job to take care of us. And we want to do that in the presence of deep witness and connection with others, because we are creatures of connection and belonging at the same time.
Oh, that is so powerful. And it's incredibly fitting for our conversation that we've had today. So thank you so much for pulling that card.
You're so welcome. And Nicole, can I give you a copy of that for the show notes?
Absolutely. And everybody who's listening, just so you know, if you go out to Keri's website, which is kerinola.com, and again, I'll have that in the show notes, you can go out there and find her cards under her, you have now I've just blanked on it. You've got is it a shop tab?
Yep. I've got a shop tab, and they can buy the physical deck, or it's also an app on iTunes and Android to play with as well.
Excellent. And they can find out more about you as well on your website too. But this is just, I love this conversation of of the shadow and how the abandonment card has come up. And it's, again, going back to owning all of ourselves and giving ourselves permission to really kind of show up. And what you're talking about, that when we take responsibility for ourselves, that it's not looking outside of ourselves, that somebody else needs to take care of us. Their job in a sense is holding us, witnessing us. And that is part of our human connection and how we grow and stay connected and the belonging and the love. I love that.
Yes. And I think we're being called as sisters to really come together and create circles and community and more of that tribe essence that we've really lost over the years. And that's why I love that you're doing this podcast, Nicole, following your call to create a community of women who are coming together to join in these deep conversations that we've often craved, but haven't felt like we've had the settings to really engage in them with. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. But I agree with you. I think there is something about coming together as women, that it's just a very different vibrational level. And it's not that I don't like men. I know there's sometimes that conversation that I'm somehow against guys, and I'm totally not. But there's something about what I think of girlfriends and sisters when we come together. There's just such a powerful thing with those circles and that connection that you're not going to find with the other gender, male gender. So yeah, feel very powerful about that.
Yeah, I think there's calls to brotherhood and sisterhood right now that we need to be fed in both ways by our gender, by the others. I mean, all of us just coming together and being in relationship in those ways. I just think it's really powerful.
Yeah. Well, Keri, thank you again for being on and sharing your work and even your process over the years, how you've really continued to wake up and take off those masks, and sharing that it is totally possible and it is okay. And at times it can feel really scary and exhausting at times, because there's a lot of energy that goes into that.
Yes.
And that it's all okay. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. I'm honored to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Thank you for listening. Do you want to receive episodes directly to your inbox or stay informed on my latest offerings? Then I invite you to go out to NicoleBurgessCoaching.com/podcast, and there is a button for you to sign up for my newsletter. Thank you again.